to the latest episode of Surgeons' Lives. I'm your host, John Monson. My guest today is Matt Albert from Orlando, Florida. I had the privilege and pleasure of being Matt's colleague for 7 years when I was in Florida, and over the years he became a close friend as well. He's an extraordinary individual, and I think would be pretty accurately described as a polymath. He's one of the most technically gifted surgeons I've ever seen. He's an incredibly smart individual from an intellectual perspective, and of course is very well known for developing the Tamis platform, which he has seen become universally adopted. As a force of energy, he's truly relentless, but like many human beings, he is a mass of contradictions and frailties, and we spend a large amount of this interview discussing just that. What was driving him over the years, regrets he has, ambitions he still has, and where we will find him in 10 years. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and send me your comments. But without further ado, let's go across and listen to Matt Albert. I'm John Monson, and this is Surgeons' Lives. Just let me start by thanking you for, I know you're busy.
1 second. So before you even get into any ground rules or anything, is this editable? You know me, I may say something borderline inappropriate. You're not going to put the hot take on Twitter and just give one snippet and with a big, what's it called on the bottom? These stupid flags. It's called
ticker tape things. Yeah.
So it's a ridiculous name. No.
I've only ever edited one video in nearly 60, and that was your friend, Dr. required something to be edited, which only he felt embarrassed.
By request.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
there are no grand rules. I'm not here to intimidate or embarrass guests. We wander casually through various things, but on the other hand, the title may be Surgeons' Lives, but the subtitle is Stuff That Matters, which is really probably more important than CVs and number of papers and awards and titles and et cetera, et cetera. And that's different from surgeon to surgeon. Some people have different things in their lives. So, but what I normally ask, again, thanking you for taking time out of your busy life. I know your life is a permanent whirl of activity, but start by, I ask everyone to start, and I know your early story because I had the privilege of being your colleague in Orlando for 7 years. Start by just a little bit of your life and early life with the words, I was born in.
So I was born in Altamont Springs, Orlando, Florida, but grew up in Altamont Springs here. I'm sitting here. I think I can see the division line is a few hundred yards away. The easy thing is some of this crazy life because you've lived it a little bit. But my folks live just a mile and a half away. Still, we've warned the kids, but I forgot to warn my mother that don't come bursting through the front door. That I'm recording something. We may get a cameo, though. You very well know that may happen. But I was born here in the early 70s. My father and parents, mother too, were only here because they both grew up in the Northeast. My father in Long Island, my mother in Boston. Northeast education snobs. Met at summer camp and dated through high school and married. But he hated the cold. Hated Boston, hated the winter, hated the driving, and all he could imagine was playing year-round golf. And he found it, partly because he was training at the time as a resident in pediatrics during the Vietnam War. So you could forego getting drafted, and you had to give 2 years back afterwards. I believe it was the MacArthur plan, but it was very common. So he finished training and had to pick somewhere on a map. And what do you know? There was a naval base in Orlando, as what you know, because you lived in that naval base, refurbished
Yep.
um, to Baldwin Park. But that's why we were here. Suddenly, he was a military guy, but obviously served doing pediatrics. But now looking back, I have asked him those stories, like how do you suddenly assimilate into this completely unique lifestyle? But 2 years here, and there was no way he's going back. Um, I think more of it about my mom now, because she had two sisters, close family, grew up her whole life there, and suddenly she's in what was the cow pasture in the middle of Central Florida, 1,000 miles away, 1,500 miles away from her family. And so we grew up going back and forth to Boston all the time. My dad having roots, and even famously, God, I might as well have him on here. He trained in Boston. I subsequently trained at the same medical school, but famously, anyone who lived there, he worked for his father during the summers of medical school and delivering in one of these big semis. And they put those little measurements on the bridges for reasons. And he took out the top of the truck on Sturrow Drive and closed down Sturrow Drive for a few hours, I imagine. But so I grew up here, but I never loved it. Great childhood on the water, nature all over. It was hardly developed back then. Yeah, you remember the bears wandering, following you on hikes and stuff. And back then, really wild. Grew up at the beaches and lakes, water sports. But I went to college in Tulane, in New Orleans, in a real city.
And
And when I
why?
was 17
How
years
come
old,
New Orleans?
um, I had two older brothers. Interesting dynamic, just as you would expect. We actually all live here, miles apart now, still, but we don't see each other as often. My oldest brother chose Tulane. I mean, John, they call it the Harvard of the South. I mean, you spend most of your time up in the northern United States, but so I won't lie. I visited him there when I was 15 years old, and geez, I mean, this is the part. If I ask, maybe you'll have to edit, but I'm a pretty open book. I remember I was 15. You could drink alcohol. I think he took me to a strip club on Bourbon Street, and I was fairly sold immediately. It's silly actually because I see how people put such thought toward their kids all over the United States, going from school to school and every campus. Um, I was young, aged. Probably never even said this, but I was in kindergarten. I think I was doing exceptional at coloring in the lines, holding the doors. Pulled my parents aside and said, "Maddie's too smart for kindergarten," and so moved me ahead to a grade. And so I was always young for my age, which there's no doubt that there were some pros and cons to it. Probably changed a lot of how I interacted, grew up with people. I was, trying to always hang out with the older kids, my brother's friends, but I was young, so going to college with such freedom at 17 years old,
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking, career wise all the way, and everything like that.
You had
And
the
a question.
you had the Disney experience as well, which everybody outside of Orlando thinks is,
full of family, good, clean family fun. But, of course, a bunch of teenagers in Disney in the summer is most likely to lead to various aspects of, whatever you want to call it. So you,
Yeah,
bit of a wild
I,
time there.
I did. That was a bit later on. Early jobs in Orlando were very blue collar, landscaping, this type of thing, in 110-degree summers. I instantly, I didn't want that. My thing, I learned the one class that everyone goofed around, typing. Probably the greatest class I ever took in maybe it was middle school or ninth grade. And so I could type so fast that I would send and do all the temp work, go to the agencies, indoors, air conditioning, sitting there, the data entry. Um, I quickly learned that I would have a job for a week, and I would just be humming along, and I'd finish on Tuesday afternoon, and they'd be like, "Well, that's it, you're done now." Um, and learn that okay, you gotta pace yourself at these things. You can't work yourself right out of a job either. But efficiency and speed, that probably sounds familiar to you from what you've seen.
Your brothers are not in medicine.
Yeah, they're not. I from childhood, and I do think maybe well, since we used to the LeVar Ball effect, that you can talk your children into existence for what you want them to be. From as young as I can remember, they said that Matt's going to be the doctor. I don't know if they had already excluded the other two. I don't think so. They even had me, and who knows, maybe I said it at some point, a brain surgeon. Yeah. So, um, that being said, clearly there were some aptitudes they probably recognized. I was very athletic, skillful, early age. I think the part of it is with the others, they didn't see the aptitudes in. Had a good experience. Science, nature. I was, crawling around here in Orlando in the swamps catching snakes. So, other than what every guy says, marine biologists, once they see Shamu, I was had this predetermined destiny to be a doctor and follow in my father's footsteps.
So, there's the phenomenon of the overachieving Asian child, but there's equally the phenomenon of, the Jewish family, and, this is the doctor, this is the lawyer, etc., etc. Do you think that was a big feature in your life?
100%. I didn't want to blow the nose on camera, and I got to wet the whistle. Um,
I'll tell the podcast listeners that you've stepped aside to blow your nose.
I I'm very critical of it now. I try not to be too critical, as the parents will say. My mom will say, I did the best I could. I mean, you were three animals, you know? No, but we did the best we could. And yet, now, especially with my own children, I intentionally know I do things. I mean, obviously, you know that you can pass on things consciously, unconsciously that you know and good qualities. You can equally learn from avoiding things that you saw and witnessed too, and not carry those on. My parents, yeah, they were as good as Asian parents, stressing out about school. That was a requirement. My mom pretends we got into an argument the other night that she was lax, and I'm going, wait a second. She controlled how we cut our hair, how we, very controlling mother. I go back on that pathology and family tree. We do that a lot.
But was your Jewishness a big feature in your life, or was it just something that you didn't
Um,
recognize, or
No, no, absolutely. I mean, my mom came from kind of a typical, Northeastern Jewish background. Parents both, Eastern European Jews, and my great grandmother, came from what's now Ukraine, Russia, and only was Jewish because she could go to a Jewish school, but got on a boat when she was 16 years old, described the sailors, came to Boston and got her life going. And the other half from Belarus. And so, yes, they came down from New York to here, but no doubt that New York and Boston did not leave them.
exactly? Yeah.
One just, I mean, the loud New York Jewish guy, 50 years ago here, when it wasn't like Miami Beach and Fort Lauderdale, that it was unique. And as you know, my mom has the strongest Boston accent. 50 years later, not a thing changed her. And so they certainly were grounded in their identities here. It was nowhere. Small Jewish community, that's something easy you cling on to as a safe, easy place where you can meet people, often get started. And so they certainly brought the education expectations and kind of the still some of the Northeast snobbery with them of the higher expectations of us.
Well, with the Ukrainian background, it's worth noting that it's possible that you're related to Dr. Wexner, because his family came from there as well. But anyway, we'll skip over that. And college in Tulane, and then Tufts for medical school.
Yeah, yes, Tufts. And alumni, my father went to Tufts as well. You might as well get the picture, of things adequately. So you talked about the Asian overachiever. I wasn't an underachiever, but things came easy to me. At least, public school in Florida came easy to me. But the school part came naturally easy. So I wasn't all the way over underachiever because I didn't get in trouble, slack off. That wasn't permitted. I mean, those report cards were posted. But I certainly didn't overachieve for sure. And really, was busy doing everything else fun that I could. During going to Tufts, that it was a very competitive time. I recall there was often 12 to 15,000 applications for 160, 180 spots. And it wasn't uncommon to apply a couple times over. You went to grad school, did the little extra research, buffed up the resume. And I know the number. I applied to 27 schools, got rejected from 25 or 26, and got waitlisted at Tufts. And after Tulane, it was mandatory to go to Europe. And the first of my traveling and opening my eyes post high school, bunch of friends. I remember calling my mom from EOS on a payphone, and she's saying, "You have to come home. You're on the wait list." And I said, "I can be on the wait list in Greece, or I can be the wait list in America."
On $5 a day.
Exactly. So I made my way home and waited on that waiting list and waited and waited and waited. And in fact, school started, and I had then made up my mind that would go back to New Orleans, and I would do the extra year there and find some post-grad something and reapply, likely get arrested on Bourbon Street for something. and it was probably not a good idea. This was probably and so a couple of weeks into the school year, I got I think it was a phone call. Yeah, it must have been a phone call. Um, and they said, well, we got a spot for you. Meanwhile, I've missed registration, all the get to know you, everything else. And they said, you can take it, or behind box number 2, we'll save you a spot next year. Even better, John. Now I really get to go back to New Orleans and buzz off for the year. And so another clear visual in my life. I went over to my dad's office right over here in Altamont. He was working. I told him the good news and told him the better news that I would be leaving for New Orleans shortly to enjoy my year off. And he said, pack your shit, you're leaving today.
The Tufts.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I packed my shit and I left for medical school that day. A couple of weeks late, filled the Volkswagen with Golf hatchback with all my possessions and threw it on the train and flew up there and started medical school.
You put it on the train?
Yeah, the auto train. They just shipped
Come
it
on,
there.
I mean, what's wrong with a road trip?
My dad didn't want me to miss 18 hours of school, John. All right. The clock was already ticking. What's really, I can't be missed to go along with the theme that I told you. We talked about at the very beginning. There was 2 other guys who got in the days before me. Both of them, in similar situations. One of them, most unbelievable underachiever, spent 3 years doing postgraduate stuff. All right. The other one, similar. The first one, Todd, graduated the first in our class in medical school.
And what does he
Went on to Johns Hopkins in residency, and then did ID at Mass General, and he's ID in Boston. The other guy, Kurt, he bounced around, was really wanted plastic surgery, general surgery, but he did the first penis transplant at Mass General. Other things to get notoriety, but he clearly found it, but ended up in plastic surgery at Mass General and has that under his belt. And you just look, the last 3 guys chosen for medical school out of 180 guys. And the assistant dean, who is a radiologist and who ultimately I did my residency at Tufts, and I would work closely with him. You'd bring him the films and throw them on that crazy board, and they'd go winding around. And he said to me one time, he goes, how do we get it so wrong? How do we look at these simple things and go through applicating little interviews and miss it so badly? I imagine he was referring to me, but
it's a very selection of people is a very imperfect system, and people have tried all sorts of different ways. But it's just intriguing to me that you were one pick away from being the world's expert on penis transplants. But so there you are in Tufts.
Yep.
When you're in Tufts, did you have an ambition? Did you have a vision? Where did you see yourself being 10 years later or whatever?
The fortunate thing, John, is that I always say, I got there, come on, I mean, 3 weeks before I was on a beach in Eos, not knowing really where I was going in life. And suddenly I was there. First off, as soon as you got a little taste of some of the stuff, not the biochemistry, but like the infectious disease, microbiology, I went, okay, I dig this and I'm on the right path. That I never questioned or looked back, which was great.
What was the path to?
That I didn't know. I was going to be a doctor, John. That was the first checkbox. Mom could say it to her friends in Boston, And even navigating that through college, I mean, God, not until I found guys in my fraternity who were applying for pre-medical school, and I'm like, whoa, I gotta get cracking on this. But I knew that this is great. I was worried though, as you did the clinical rotation, and then I even met a couple weird, like-minded people. I found a niche of, 4 or 5 guys who, I wasn't the ultra competitive gunner guy. I stayed far away. I was at that point, I was a classic underachiever because I knew all I had to do was pass. I was at a new city, good time of my life after college where you didn't want to be an adult yet. And all my friends from college were in Manhattan, finance jobs, living it up. And so I had to pass. And so I wasn't concerned at that point. I did always say, though, and I made a promise to myself because, I had this family support financing me. I also had a good glimpse into my friends, a good couple of my friends who were taking loans for this. And I said, wait a second, would I have the same commitment if this? And so I said, not, this is, I'm giving this 100%. I'm not going to burn through, money and end up something else. And I said, whatever I end up doing now, I'm kind of going to underachieve my way through, but I'm going to give it 200% when I get to where I'm going. Didn't know where I was going, but I was going to give it 200%.
So, you after Tufts was residency, and then fellowship in Houston, and then back in Orlando. But at some point, you transitioned from what you call the relaxed underachiever to the opposite.
Yeah.
Was there a
I
moment,
guess.
or was it just gradual?
Yeah, I guess I have to that obviously I have to go back because we hit that gap, and I think it's so key to me. I like surgery immediately. Fell in love with it. Didn't like the time commitment. Didn't like the stigma associated with the surgeons. It's part of the ego, the arrogance, maybe that, but it was merely the technical part that I was instantly, it was amazing. And there were some old Boston surgeons that I worked with that had, were quite good. And I was, weren't really seeing laparoscopy or anything like that. What I didn't like is the hours and the commitment. And it was still during the time when you were on call every third night. And so when we were I applied for general surgery residency. I went to these interviews and I looked around, and I was just so ambivalent because I wanted this fun, exciting lifestyle, doing all the fun things I like doing. My friends were traveling, bopping around in their finance careers and jobs. And I didn't know that I wanted to make this surgery commitment. And it was, there was at the time legendary bad guys in surgery when you applied. The Joel Fisher. I still don't know who this guy is, but you went, oh my God, don't go there. The guy is
Yeah.
nuts, And another one was this guy Musa in San Diego. And so San Diego is a place I surfed growing up, went on surf trips, Black's Beach. I mean, and the university's right there. Of course I'm applying to San Diego. And I hear about this legendary crazy man. And from my pathway from the physician, all I knew was my dad in private practice. I didn't know about academics and stuff. He took care of the neighborhood, the community. I didn't think anything else of it at all. And so I went there, and the thing was that there was grand rounds on every Saturday. That's when the grand rounds was. And like Eminem was Saturday too. And I saw this young little intern. He must have been 30 days into it, right? Guy was pale as a ghost. stain jacket, shit hanging out of every pocket, stethoscope over the side. I go, okay, tell me, guy, tell me what's going on. It's like, I haven't had a day off in 30 days. And I go, oh my God.
This
You
is
know,
in San Diego.
it was San Diego. And I said, this isn't for me. So what did I tinker in? The thing was emergency medicine, was my thing. Maybe I'll do that. And so I scrambled for a prelim spot. I said, well, I'm not going to go anywhere else. I'm going to stay right where I am. And I showed up the first day as the prelim. Who knew who the prelims were? And one of the attendings, Steve Schweitzberg, saw me and he looked at me and said, what in the F are you doing here? And I said, I'm your new intern. And 2 weeks later, I operated with him one time. And he, and I guess it was the first time I heard this, that I did a hernia with him, and he stopped 10 minutes into it, and he just froze and looked. He said, have you done this before or something? And I said, no, I just watched you guys. You never let me touch anything. And that was a shame of surgical education, but because they let me do something, I would have been so gung-ho into it unequivocally. But he said, no, you're doing this. You're staying in surgery. We're keeping you, in fact. You need to stay here. A kind of big turnaround from the guy who could not believe he was, after being on his rotation as a medical student and not staying for the 10 o'clock appendectomy, that he didn't know. And so, on one of my rotations in medical school, Dr. Freeman, transplant surgeon, I got an honors on it, but he said, Matt is far too laid back to ever be a surgeon. That was his commentary. So that's why I had to go back and tell that story. Ultimately, one of the other interns went and left for radiology. The other intern left for USC Film School. So I went right into the categorical track, never had to take a year off, and ultimately, had a pretty accomplished residency career.
And culminating in giving grand rounds in Buffalo with Steve Schweitzberg, who is now chair of surgery there.
Yeah, and so again, academics and mentors, I didn't know from mentors. I, clearly had some skill in surgery. I looked around for people who impressed me, and by that point in time, I didn't know about CVs and publications and everything else. I wanted to go right into private practice from there. I had noticed the guy, Andy Hackford, who trained at Leahy, that he did colorectal surgery, and it was night and day how he did it compared to the other staff. And so I said, at least I'm going to go and learn this a little bit better, and then I'll go into practice. And so then went to fellowship in Houston, ended up with Randy. And at the end of that, I almost was asked to stay there. Was very flattered. But it was a big practice. And then thing was, hey, you get to be a part of 14 of us, academics, fellows, everything else. But the pay was something still. Look, I didn't do this for the finances, and I know this is something you think about a lot and talk. But this was in Europe. We invested, hundreds of thousands of dollars, in this, and so you did really think about that. And you went, my God, I didn't invest 14 years in training to, make that money. I'm going back to Orlando. I had met a girl from when I was in Boston who was from Orlando. So we moved back here to start practice.
You go back and from very small acorns, you were one of the key figures in developing, one of the best programs in the country. And part of that was your not sudden, but your recognition that you had a talent in the world of innovation. And I think most people would have to be living under a rock not to recognize that you're credited with the development of Tamis, as you and I have often discussed, for people who couldn't afford Thames, but nonetheless has been used much more widely around the world, and to your credit. But so your career became, and out of that you became known internationally, I think, is without a doubt, and you get on that hamster wheel of charging around, operating on patients left, right, and center, traveling, talking, writing, etc., etc. I don't think it would be particularly shocking for me to say that that brings its own stresses with it. The world of hospital systems, the world of life. There's family pressures, there's work pressures, there's all sorts of pressures, and you've had your issues with that.
Yeah.
Where are you now? You're in your, let's call it your early 50s.
Hmm.
What's, when you look back and try and learn that maturity, what do you say about that to a young surgeon?
Well, I think, my trajectory is, not something, I mean, when you look at it, especially, someone who came from such an academic background and you work through the hierarchy and ranks and everything. And in fact, that was some of the things that affected me great. It wasn't, so I started in private by myself because I felt so confident that I could do it. I wasn't just learning surgery, I had to learn how to run a business practically. And there was the hustle. It wasn't academics where you walked in and there was 300 endoscopists feeding you colons. This was private practice. You had to go make a name for yourself, do it by being friendly, being technically good, having good outcomes. And so the first amazing pressure was how cruel coming back to Orlando was with a competing host of colorectal surgeons here. And I couldn't imagine how crazy it was, but it was competitive, very competitive. And ultimately, people wanted to take you down. When I came through and kind of shocked people with Tamis, part of the kind of thing was uh, who the fuck is this guy? No one could claim me. No one knew who I was. No one took care of me at Leahy and walked me into the pro fellows, ASCRS, and you can give talks. And I was still a bit naive about the whole thing too. But when I got to Orlando and I quickly learned how to do surgery, recognized I could do it. First thing, it was very lonely by yourself. Second thing, I saw these older guys phasing out of private practice and said, all right, I need to have a legacy. I ain't ended 30 years like other people did, walking, closing a door and being bent out of shape. And the second thing was, I thought I instantly had talent. I just said, I want to be the biggest colon place, not only in Florida, but have people send patients from all over the world here. So I aimed my sights pretty damn high as I started getting busy. And it became ridiculously busy. And so bringing out Tamis, that it wasn't easy. I had some people who, weren't so nice. I kind of had a little bit of target on my back. I had lots of attention I didn't want. And suddenly, when I lived my whole life avoiding research and academics in this whole rigmarole, that I had to write about Tamis suddenly and publish it. And all while being a clinical surgeon, and to really, but my thing was, I never cared about any of that. I wanted to be the most amazing technical surgeon. That's all I could think of as a surgeon. I didn't know about the other stuff. all I wanted to be was to do surgery because it was technically satisfying and amazing and always challenging and innovating. And so this was a huge departure than anything I wanted, needed, expected. It was the most amazing career that I never would have hoped for or chosen. And so, maintaining that volume of surgeries I was doing, 250 to 300 colectomies a year for 20 straight years, while buzzing in and out of town, while raising three kids, while I think I was a good dad. I can't say I was the absentee dad. I was constantly looked at around at guys who really were in the hospital nonstop because I was pretty efficient and good. We built the group up and everything else. And it never gets easier juggling things because you get to, and really all that too was, what about my spare time? What about my independent free time? When suddenly, instead of doing fun things, I was writing book chapters at night, things I never in a million years wanted to do. On weekends, I was doing these things that took time, but the juggle will always be hard, especially now, because one, as you get older, you can't do as much as you could before. Two, you really are constantly thinking of what the future holds now, more than I ever planned early on. I'm trying to make up for it now. I and so you're always having to cut out something to if you want to do something new. And the juggle now, you try your best you can. I try to set boundaries. Things aren't as enamoring as before going to a new place and a new country. And I got the privilege of going so many places. I'm excited by every invitation now, but you say no. I say I've had kind of now 4 careers worth of surgery at 52. Are there other things I want to accomplish? Yeah, but I think most of them are almost outside of surgery. Oddly, I accomplished so much so early, at such a rapid pace, that I don't feel and everybody always pinned me as the type A guy who would never be able to leave surgery and, was going to be dragged out at 80 years old. And in the last 5 to 10 years, I can say most definitely, no way, no way.
There were times, and I'm not. I don't want to.
No, I give
Secrets,
you,
but there were times, Matt, when
you know me better than most, and I have no problem, maybe my memoirs later will be more detailed, but
so here's my question. There were times when perhaps it all got too much for you. When you look back over now at the stage of your career, as you say, there are things that you want to do differently now, or you're doing differently now. But when you look back at the hamster wheel that you were on, what would you do differently, or would you different? Or I mean, some people
God,
you can't. It's the way you are. I mean,
yeah, I probably wouldn't do anything differently. I couldn't imagine doing anything differently. You know me when I'm at home. My friends, when they check in on Friday and we do inventory of, responsibilities, they go, "How many activities are you going to do, Matt? How many activities?" When they say that, they're serious because I have to be moving. I have to be doing something. I can't be. I don't take vacations at a resort at the beach and sit under an umbrella and drink cocktails. Nope, I'm doing on the woods adventure on ATVs. I think I've always been in kind of a little daring, extreme skateboarding, lots of injuries. I think I like the adrenaline rush of things. And I think even surgery kind of in a sick way, provided that, rush too, in more ways than one.
I had
I
a
wasn't,
I had a good friend who's no longer with us, who was a very famous racing driver called Sterling Moss, and he was in the 50s and 60s probably the best racing driver in the world, and he like you did not like sitting around, and he had this phrase that he used, which was movement is tranquility. For him, he could not, he had to be doing something, etc. And for you, I think I've said this to you more than once. I thought COVID was a little bit of a lifesaver for you because there was the work, there was the family, there was the travel, etc. But the travel stopped, and then you
yeah,
you bought a boat,
yeah,
and suddenly you
it was
had
a new
a little
chapter.
bit of movement, was tranquility in the boat.
Yeah, I think um, what I want to make sure it kind of people get out of this, the travel and that part, the intoxicating part wasn't, any of the, ego or, been showered with because if anything that what people would commonly tell me, what you realize is, like what they part of the lure was, I was just an ordinary dude, ordinary bloke. When I'd go to Ireland, I wasn't cut out of that, academic mold. It almost kind of seemed more trustworthy instantly, but I don't know. I think they realized I wasn't, the typical guy. I was what I was intoxicated by. I did it for the travel. The people I met on these things, I always was inspired by someone somewhere. I went to Europe in 2007 and we, skipped over that, but it was Soren Lauerberg who I met, who,
Yeah.
had a few kind of impactful people in all of surgery. Steve, the first one, who I he did a lot in innovation, and I remember asking him, "How do you know how these, which is going to be good, which is going to be bad?" Later, Randy, in a quiet sort of way, um, and then I searched for a long time for guidance and someone who I was impressed by. When I met you out of the woodwork, and that's you to some point, but it's different now for people coming through. I mean, my God, I have like high school students who are set on colorectal surgery and know, it's bananas. So I did it for that part of it. It led to COVID, and right, the nearly last day we were working doing colonoscopy, saw an old guy doing a scope and says, "Hey, I'm getting rid of a boat," and famously, like probably to change my entire life. I mean, I grew up here. We lived on a lake. Fishing was in our blood. I mean, we didn't have to catch dinner, but we could. Um, and so this was, and I had some experience when I moved back. My brother was a real redneck, and so I went on a boat with him early on. And what I learned pretty quickly is that when you're trailering boats back and forth, even small boats, that 99% of the morbidity happens before it even touches the water.
Exactly.
And so I vowed never to do that. It was a good excuse not to blow money. And so suddenly there was a boat in a marina with valet service right on the river. And so I said, yeah, at a cheap price. I said, why not? And suddenly hospitals shut down and DeSantis said, everyone go fish and golf.
So you
So I
did.
got down to a handicap of two or so, and that's when I began my fishing expedition, which has
Well,
been
so
an unbelievable addition to my life.
that brings me, as we're going to pivot in the last few minutes, just to ask you one question. What's the best piece of advice you ever got?
Um, I never, I try to be so outspoken, even with my kids and stuff, and everything I find. Now, these days, you're getting proverbs from the second you wake up in the form of memes, this, that, Facebook, shooting everything every which way to yeah, you know what? Here's the best advice I ever got since you were going before. She'll be proud of me. Therapy is a gift I give myself, you know? Everyone can use a therapist. Navigating this world, how I ended up through that. I don't want to say it was sheer luck. I had my mind set on certain things. It worked out how I wanted to. I wouldn't change anything about it. So it was easy to leave that lifestyle because I wasn't doing it because I needed the constant, ego barrage of another plaque or award or anything. And in fact, in the years that passed, it's kind of funny, within our own society or anything, there's, never got any real, acknowledgement, or I don't think I've ever given a talk on Tamis for in any part furthermore. Um, uh, no, as you get older, priorities change. I still can do too much surgery, but my fun time is much more prioritized
You
now, for
would you
sure.
would you have a piece of advice that you would give a young surgeon?
I don't want to say balance. There's so many different things and not one piece of advice because, I mean, from navigating the politics of things, of just early on, you hear every single interview. It's amazing. I can close. I said, up. I've heard the one for the day. I've heard the other 256 for the entire, group. Right? There may be zero difference in any of them, and so I don't really think people know what's out there. My easiest piece of advice: no one should get married before they're 30.
Okay,
100%.
I'll take that.
Absolutely not. Again, I think I was much more immature socially, as I described, a grade ahead, college early, 17 years old in a town that had a drinking age of 18 still. I needed a fake ID for 18 when I was in college. Uh, I won't say I was a wild man, but I had fun. And I've
Oh
continued
yeah,
to have.
and still do,
And,
still
um,
do.
and I
Okay,
think that's no doubt part of it. I mean, you got to have fun. I watch so many of my friends. I mean, yeah, family is critical, but my kids would be miserable if they saw me not get the enjoyment in my life. And I see so many friends sitting there sacrificing every single weekend. It's Florida at a baseball game, lacrosse game, and it's from sun up to sundown, Friday to Sunday. I say, man, I mean, you gotta have some fun in your life and time for yourself while doing this career. The other advice, I thought of a lot of things in a couple days that I did this, but not exactly, long term thing. I think travel is mandatory. You got to go and see other places and how it's done and meet other people. At the end of all this is said and done, my single greatest accomplishment is knowing friends in every single city around the world. Same with you. I can go anywhere and I can see someone and go, oh my God, and be so thrilled to see them and sincerely. We have the same thoughts and ideas. We have a very common belief system, and ultimately, my little career in surgery around the world is what I'm sure partly my afterlife fun will consist of. We talk about it plenty, when we can wind this down and have a little bit more fun.
okay. Here's some simple questions. You don't get any time to answer these.
Bullets,
Think about these questions. You
yeah,
ready?
bullets, yeah.
Okay, window or aisle?
Um, Aisle, always,
Favorite
because I have to stand up, John, every 5 minutes, and I can't stop moving. So
favorite food?
um, Cuisine just has to be Asian overall, Japanese, sushi, but a
Okay.
good pizza every single Friday night.
Best movie ever.
There are no best movies, but ongoing most quoted Caddyshack.
Okay.
I grew up to the tenets of Caddyshack,
We know George Nassif does, so we won't include that. But do you have one phobia or fear?
Um, no, no. I've never sky dive. I don't like heights, and yet I love again that I do it because it scares me. I like that
Okay.
part.
What talent would you like to have?
I can't believe I never learned how to play the guitar. I think that it is just, again, one of those other just technical, tangible finger skill sets like golf hand-eye coordination that I would have been really good at. You hear Howard Stern every day yelling at himself on the radio that he started so late. And I feel so similar. Big regret.
Okay. Beatles or Stones?
Stones, but
Cat-
really, both of those before my time a little bit.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs, my entire life, as you know, I hatred for cats. Rescued a cat for my daughter during Hurricane Dorian from the shelter. Hence her name is Dory, and that is the only animal I have aside from these lovely fish. This clownfish and these clownfish parent and enemy have been with me for 17 years now.
Really?
17 years.
That dude who comes in at the weekends, who fixes it, has probably switched them out several times. He just hasn't told.
The dude didn't come for a good decade or so. I did it, but it's gotten so expensive over the last few years. You talk about inflation. When a yellow tang goes from $50 to $1,000
Yeah.
from trade restrictions and other thing, and that a tank crash and you can cry.
Yeah.
Again, one of the more expensive hobbies, like fishing.
So, last question, Matt. Where will I find you in 10 years?
Since this is the last one, it's not a bullet. I'm going to ramble on. I the reason that feel fortunate, I probably can leave surgery a little bit earlier than most with some of the outside opportunities now. It gave me a window into multiple companies and business experience that I probably could never get from the MBA degree with my little letters on the jacket and a Facebook post. It was the most real life experience that. So I do love the technical part of surgery. I love anorectal surgery, and I love the idea of continuing that part time. I do think will spend some years contributing to in the industry. But in 10 years, I do want to spend a good portion of my time at some island or beach home, preferably in the Caribbean, somewhere far off, a little in isolation. I don't mind that at all. I like solitude and enjoying the nature, the ocean, fishing.
Well, I got to tell you, as we both share similar skin colorings, I hope that you will be covered in factor 50 during that process.
Um, While at the same time, I do have the grind. The only other regret besides guitar is the other cultural thing was we were very fiscally conservative. And I always said I would take bigger risks. And my single other big regret, sure, we all have the God miss the 10 we miss that, but I still can see myself leading to something entrepreneurial. That is my only other regret, that I didn't take the leap and start some business. So that chapter still very possible.
Still time. Well, listen, Matt, this has been a blast. I think it's been really enjoyable. It's
Therapeutic here.
yeah, I think it's been one of my most enjoyable podcasts. We spent very little time on the main agenda, which is actually, I think, is going to make it one of the most enjoyable interviews for everybody who wants to hear it. So I want to thank you
Well,
personally
thank.
for
Well,
everything
maybe we'll
you've
have
done
to
for
do
me and for
a
spending
take
time
two in
today.
a few years from now. See where I am.
Exactly, and
50 now.
you can tell your mother from me, I'm disappointed she didn't crash through the door.
I am too, in a way. I am too.
So thank you so much, man.
No, thank you. I'll make sure the Irish guys tune in. I felt a little additional pressure because the last time I was with them, the young guys did say, they're like, if you listen closely, you'll find a couple good pearls of wisdom, like they're excellent. So I did feel some pressure that somewhere in there they'll hear something that was worthwhile for them.
Yeah, don't hold your breath.